You know, in the long history of crime, some stories are just so wild they become legends. And today, we're diving into one of the biggest. A guy who hijacked a plane, grabbed a fortune, and then, poof, vanished into thin air. He left behind nothing but a name that wasn't even his, D.B. Cooper.
So, let's set the scene. It's Thanksgiving Eve, 1971, Portland International Airport. You've got people rushing to get home for the holiday, boarding what they think is just a totally routine flight to Seattle. You know the vibe? Just complete, boring normalcy. The absolute last place you'd ever expect a legend to be born.
Okay, so Section 1, a man with a plan. A hijacking begins at 30,000 feet. Right. Because on that flight, there was one man who had a plan, and I mean a meticulous plan. A plan that wasn't just about hijacking a plane, it was about capturing the public's imagination for, like, the next 50 years.
So who was this mystery man? Well, he bought his ticket under the name Dan Cooper. It was actually the media that later messed it up and called him DB, and for whatever reason, that's the name that stuck. And just look at the description of him. A middle-aged guy in a black business suit, just calmly ordering a bourbon and soda. You can see how his appearance was kind of his first weapon, right? He was basically hiding in plain sight, blending in so perfectly that nobody, and I mean nobody, suspected what he was about to do.
All right, so the plane takes off, it's climbing into the sky, and that's when Cooper makes his move. And he doesn't do it with a big shout or some dramatic threat. No, it was super quiet, just a simple gesture. He passes a note to one of the flight attendants. And get this, she thought it was his phone number. She just kind of slipped it into her pocket, totally oblivious.
That's when Cooper leans in and says, "Miss, you'd better read that. I have a bomb." Chilling, right? So the flight attendant opens the note, and then he calmly opens his briefcase just enough for her to see this terrifying mess of red sticks, wires, and a battery. And just like that, the hijacking was on.
His demand was so specific and, well, audacious. $200,000. Now you have to remember, this is 1971. That was an absolute fortune back then. We're talking over $1.5 million in today's money. A serious payday.
But here's the thing. It wasn't just about the cash. His demands showed a really calculating mind at work. He asked for the 200 grand, yeah, but also 4 parachutes. And that right there was a brilliant move. Why 4? Well, it suggests he might not be jumping alone, right? It keeps the authorities guessing, completely off balance.
All right, Section 2, the mid-air heist. An exchange is made, but the journey isn't over. So the plane lands in Seattle just like he wanted. And this is where the next, super tense phase of his plan kicks off, right there on the tarmac.
And you know what? Cooper was true to his word. As soon as the authorities delivered the ransom money and the parachutes, he let all 36 passengers go, totally unharmed. He just kept the flight crew as hostages. And the whole time, everyone who saw him said the same thing. He was calm, polite, and completely in control of the situation.
Okay, now this is where Cooper's expertise becomes undeniable. Just look at this flight plan. It was so incredibly specific. Every single instruction, fly low, fly slow, keep the landing gear down, it was all designed to make a parachute jump not just possible, but survivable. And the real kicker? He chose the Boeing 727 for one very specific reason, its rear air stair. It was the perfect platform for a mid-air getaway. So then, around 8 p.m., in the middle of a raging storm, a warning light flashes in the cockpit. The rear staircase had been opened, and with all that money strapped to his body, D.B. Cooper just leaped from the back of the plane, straight into the pitch-black, freezing night. He was just gone.
Section 3, the vanishing act. The search for a ghost. What happened next was honestly one of the biggest and most frustrating manhunts this country has ever seen.
The FBI immediately spun up Operation Norjack. And this wasn't just some small search party. We're talking about a massive investigation that would end up spanning decades. They scoured every inch of that rugged terrain in the Pacific Northwest. They interviewed hundreds of people and chased down every single lead they could find.
And the results of that massive, massive search? Absolutely nothing. Zero. Zilch. They didn't find a body. They didn't find his parachute or the empty money bag. It was literally as if D.B. Cooper had just been swallowed by the sky. For 9 long years, the trail was completely cold. Then, look at this timeline. You see that big gap? In 1980, out of nowhere, a little boy finds these rotting bundles of cash, and the serial numbers match the ransom money. But instead of solving the case, this just created even more questions. Like, how did the money get there? And where in the world was the rest of it? With no more answers coming, the FBI finally, officially closed the active case in 2016, after 45 years.
Okay, Section 4, an unsolved legend, the competing theories about Cooper's fate. With the official investigation over, all we're left with is speculation. So, what really happened to D.B. Cooper?
When you get right down to it, the whole thing is a huge paradox. On one hand, you've got the FBI who for years have said there's no way he survived. I mean, look at the facts. He jumped at night, into a storm, with no proper skydiving gear, into freezing, brutal terrain. The odds were stacked against him. But then you have the man himself, meticulous, calm, and expert in aviation who chose the perfect plane for a jump. So the question is, could someone who planned everything so perfectly really have failed at the very last step? And that, right there, is his ultimate legacy. Think about this. In the entire history of commercial aviation in the United States, his case is the only one. The only skyjacking that has never, ever been solved. He's a total one-of-a-kind phantom in the history of American crime.
So, we're left with the same question that has fascinated people for over half a century. Did D.B. Cooper pull off the perfect crime? Did he live out his days in quiet anonymity with a fortune? Or was his daring escape just a final, fatal plunge into the unforgiving darkness? The truth? It seems just vanished right along with him into that stormy night sky.